is all 7 of them. This is the first one. The names are right over there on top of them. I've labeled them. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to figure out which of these I should be using to test my renders mostly. Some of them look really fantastic. I like this one a lot, this Blauburn Night. Yeah, they all look interesting and they'll help me to see this thing under different lighting. A render of the Brown Photo Studio, and the latest render I did was with the fluid mesh, so I'm going to uncheck it so you can see what happens. So there's this swelling, and that is coming from distortion being produced by the fact that Arnold thinks that the fluid, what I'm using to represent the fluid mesh, is thicker than, it's perceiving it to be a thicker fluid. So it's producing some distortion as we're looking at the meat through the fluid mesh. It's time to take this burger course to completion. My plan initially was to sort out the painting of the cheese, the patties, and the onions, and then postpone the painting of the bottom bun to another release. But I think I'm going to combine the painting of the patties, the cheese, the onions, and the bottom bun into one lesson group. So you're going to get the painting and the shading of everything you see on the screen in this group of lessons. And that means after these group of lessons, the only thing left to paint is the fluid mesh. And I think I'm okay with isolating the fluid mesh into its own lesson group. So I'm looking forward to wrapping up this course with that lesson on painting the fluid mesh. Now for what you see on the screen, I'm going to do what I did in the last lesson and decimate all of these meshes because I do not want to send them into Substance Painter at their higher subdivision levels. And another thing I'm going to do, which I also did in the last lesson where I painted the cucumbers and the top sauce, is I'm going to have the top sauce in Substance only so that it guides me in painting the things that the top sauce is colliding with. But I'm not going to take a high subdivision level of this top sauce. I'm just going to take this low subdivision 1 resolution of it. And what I'm going to do is apply the painted data that I painted in the last lesson to the top sauce, just so we can see it in Substance whilst you're painting the other stuff. But it's really just there for guidance. Now for the decimation process, I'm going to turn it off because I don't need to decimate it. As I just mentioned, it's going to be subdivision level 1. But everything else you see on the screen that's going to be painted is going to be decimated. So I've set all of them to subdivision level 3 in preparation for decimation. And another thing I am also going to hide is these charred meat pieces. They definitely don't need to be decimated. They just have 1 subdivision level and they're fairly low. It's about 74,000. I don't think it's going to hurt. I don't think the file size is going to be that big at all. The other one is 39,000. So I'm going to keep them off too whilst I run this decimation process. All right, so I'm going to set my decimation percent to 15. I'm going to start over there and I'm going to process all of them and decimate all of them at the same time. The other time you saw me do current because I only needed to do it for 1 mesh. So I'm going to do it for all the meshes. Before I go ahead and pre-process all of them at the same time, I'm going to make sure I check keep UVs just to be on the safe side. So it preserves all my UVs. I don't think it matters as much, but I think it usually does still keep them. But to be on the safe side, I'm going to have keep UVs checked. And at least for the pre-process command, I don't think it matters that you have this keep UVs checked. But definitely for decimate, you probably have to have it checked. So I'm going to go pre-process all. And it should go through and pre-process everything that's visible. It's asking me if I want to bake layers. I probably have layers on here and it needs for those layers to be baked. So I'm okay with that because this is a separate file that has isolated these meshes for decimation. So my original burger pieces are stored in an original file somewhere. So I'm going to go bake all layers whenever it asks me. And I'll let it run through the pre-process command, which should take a while. I'll just forward the video. Done with the pre-processing, and now it's time to decimate all. So I'm just going to hit the decimate all button and let it go through and do them. So the decimation is done. If I go to inspect the meshes, yeah, they're significantly lower. These individual chunks of the top patty were about 300,000 polygons. Now they're 85,000, and my UVs have been preserved. So I'm going to export all of this stuff to an OBJ format. I'm going to turn on my top sauce, and I'm just going to use the subtool master to export all of them, and I'll come back so we can assemble this stuff. Here's everything in Maya, all the OBJs dragged into Maya. I'm just going to click through and inspect to make sure everything is right as far as the UVs are concerned, because I know previously I had a broken UV for the last couple of lessons. So the top sauce is good. This is the one that's going to have the paint work that's already done for it applied, sub D1. The cheese is good. All these chunks, what is that? Oh yeah, these are the onions. These are the onions for the top patty. These are onions that are just hanging, and then I suppose there are some onions. Yeah, they're onions for the bottom patty. So this is all onion. Yeah, that's a decimated cheese. Yep, that looks fine too. Decimated. Bottom bun also looks good. So yeah, everything is here. All UVs look correct. So I'm going to send this to Substance so we can start with the paint work. And as I did previously, I'm going to rename these because it's only kept the name for the name space. All right, so that's all the renaming done. I'm just going to clear the namespaces out of this file. It's not that necessary, but I might as well just, it's something I'm used to doing. Okay, so now that everything is renamed, I'm going to go through and apply materials to everything that's on the same UV set, so Substance knows how to group them. So I'm going to select the cheese, which are all on the same UV set. Let me go to UV editing mode. Make sure I show the outliner and make sure the attribute editor is active so that you can see everything. So I'll grab the cheese, find new material. Just a Lambert should be fine. Go cheese matte. It's gonna go through and do it for everything else, and I'll come back when it's all done. This is just my way of ensuring that everything has an assignment. The last one I'm going to give is this top sauce. Assign new material. Top sauce matte. And yeah, that should be it. This is going to get exported as an FBX to Substance because everything now has a material assigned for it for Substance. All right, so this is the file from the last lesson where I painted the top sauce and the cucumber. And I'm in this file because I want this texture that I painted, only to use it as reference. So it's the base color of the top sauce. I'm going to right click on it and I'm going to go create smart material. So I'll go create smart material and it's going to save it in my library. So I might as well just give it a better name so I can identify it. Top sauce. Let's see, burger, top sauce, color. Okay, that should move it to, yeah, it's right there. Right, so when I bring in my new stuff, I can apply it to that piece of it that's accompanying the new stuff. So this is my FBX in Substance. Everything seems to have come in. Bottom bun with only one tile, my charred meat, cheese. So all the tiles came in nice, the onions and the patties, which have the most It's the most amount of painting I'm going to be doing. And here is my top sauce. Okay, so I'm going to, in this layer or in this texture set, I'm going to drag the top sauce I saved from the last painting session. I'm just going to put it in here. And there it is. So it's just going to sit there and it's going to help me see how it's working in relation to everything else I'm painting. I'm just going to go into my base color so I can just view a single channel for now. All right, just so you can see the paint. All right, so that's everything set up. Let me just add some fill layers here. Show wireframe. So that's my result. I'm going to reduce this wireframe opacity so I can see just a little bit better. That's something I should use more often. All right, so we're in Substance and we're good to go. So now it's time to go to ZBrush and get our base paint work. By the way, ignore this error. This error came in when I imported. I think it has something to do with my charred meat. Some of these might be too small for it to compute in normal. I think it's related to that, but it doesn't matter. These are not really, if you remember, they were UV'd with automatic because I don't really care to give them meticulous painting, but they will get noisy color data just so they're interesting and they match with the final model. And also, by the way, I use the same settings I use to import the other FBXs in the other lessons. So if you want to see those settings, just reference the other lessons just to see the initial settings I used when I hit new project. All right, so now it's time to put in my multicolor work. So I'm going to start with the cheese. I'm going to first pick a material that will allow me to better see my paint colors. And I have Torchlight open with Shift Z and Z to occasionally activate it. I'm going to select this one and highlight it because this is my crystallized version and it's easier to sample colors from this palette. I'm going to go Shift Z to get out of here. And actually, I'm going to go to white and make sure I fill all the subtools with white first. So I'm going to make sure I have RGB selected, deactivate Z add, go to my subtool master and go to fill so that it just goes through and fills everything with a pure value of white. Just color, okay. It looks like there's two pieces that I should have on that I didn't have on. I guess I can do them manually. I'll just go fill object, and I will return back to the cheese. And I have my blocking brushes that I started with from the ZBrush library, these two. So I'll switch back to my cheese color, make sure I have color spray on, and start blocking in my color. For the cheese. And it looks like I'm on subdivision level 3. Let me do all high so that everything is on its highest subdivision level so I can get the most amount of detail from this blocking phase. Yeah, get a lot more splotchiness, which is what I want. Isolate this. Yeah, it looks like you got the other side too. Fine. And this cheese, as I've been mentioning throughout this course, I do want it to be silky. So it's not going to have too much detail. I want it to be easily distinguishable from the sauce. And the sauce is very gritty and grainy. And the cheese is not going to be like that. So this base color should suffice. But I will go over it again with a more grainy color with the Alpha 8, or maybe not. I think this is good enough for a base. Just need a nice little multicolored base. I think any additional color information, if needed, should be done in the substance phase. So I think that's going to be it for the blocking the cheese multicolor base. I'm going to go Shift Z and sample first a dark color for my patties. Make sure I have Z active, otherwise it's not sampling anything. And pick one of these colors. And this meat is going to have a really complicated color scheme, but here I'm just going to focus on, looks like one of the layers is in recording mode, so should probably bake all. I'm going to focus on just getting in this nice little base. The meat has a lot of colors that come from parts of it being burnt, well done, medium, and in some very small areas I'm seeing some rare meat in the reference. So it has these pinkish purplish hues, so you'll see me playing with that. Let me turn off transparency because I know it's an expensive feature. And just get through this. Okay, so that is the base for the meat. All right, so the next thing I'm going to get is these onions. These onions are going to be fairly complicated with the solution I'm thinking about, because we're going to be painting some very interesting transmission wraps. But it's important to know that based off what I'm seeing in the reference, it has a purple hue. Well, it's a red onion, so of course it has a purple hue, but it has a lot of transmission too, so it's hard to pinpoint that. But I'm going to definitely try to get that purple color from my reference. It's going to be a little bit harder. I might need to actually go with the original image and also increase its opacity so I can see the full color, and then scale it up so I can find this. Yeah, that's one of the onions right there. Right there. See this little purple color here? I'm going to try to get that. Yes. And I'm going to use it to get all the onions, and I'm going to vary value so that I can, for these charred ones, because they're burnt towards the end. Definitely don't want to use black, but let me just solo this so that I can. Do forget, it's good to turn off perspective when you're painting like this, so you don't get some weird projection during painting. It's a really purplish color. I'm gonna raise that just a little bit, increase the value some. And the saturation, I'll cheat a little bit. Just to mix in some values. And for this long one, I'm gonna first give them an initial coat. I really shouldn't be worrying about detailing here because none of this really is the detailing phase. So I'll just stick with the purple. And actually I can hint. I'm gonna go a little darker at the tips because that is something I'm gonna be doing in substance. See how dark I can go. Maybe push opposing end to be brighter. This is just giving myself some hints about what I'm going to be doing, but all this work will happen in Substance. Solo and get these done. I'll give them a light color first, then go back to what I sampled just to mix it in there. I just really want to see that purple oniony feel for now. Okay, and then when it comes to the charred meat, this really is a really dark color. Thankfully it's sampled as brown. I was hoping it wouldn't return a pure black value because of the lighting. And actually for this, I'll just fill. It's not important that I put granular information. It's not even gonna stand out. And the last one, really important. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to paint in first my sauce, because I have a simpler approach to blocking in the bread, because I have a separate piece that lets me know what is sauce and what is not sauce. So I'm gonna go C. Let me go with a darker color since I'm going with the darker hues. Yeah, dark saturated color. And I'm going to block in my sauce color. Actually, for the bottom here, I wouldn't bother because I know none of this is sauce. I know it's a bun, so I won't even do too much coloring over there. So then the next thing I'm going to do is I have a piece up here. All right, so this is the mesh I'm talking about. It's just the sauce separate. This was before I did the merge. So with that active and painted white, it's gonna let me know where the bun is, so I can quickly block out some colors for the bun. So I'm gonna go Shift Z and finish this multicoloring by getting some of the bun colors in there. And come down here and just very roughly block out these regions. This might be something that I might want to paint a little bit more meticulously, because it will help me just at least have a good idea of where the separation point is, even though it's not going to be that hard to figure it out. I think the meshes that I send to Substance is detailed enough that it will tell me, but this won't hurt. And I'm going to be making some choices about what is going to be bun and what is going to be bun partially soaked in sauce anyway. So I don't need an exact outline. I just need a general idea of where that separation is, and I'll paint whatever looks good on the mesh. Okay, so now I'm going to finish this by turning on back face mask so I can paint this backside, this underside, without impacting everything I just did on the opposing end, and worry about the real painting of this in Substance. So that's it. If I am to hide this sauce, yeah, I have a general idea of where the separation is going to be. That is the blocking, the multicolor. I'm going to push this out with the multi-map exporter like I did for the other videos. I'll be back with these multicolors loaded in texture from Polypaint on, and that's the only thing I'll have on, and I will export. Also want to mention that I am going to be exporting the ambient occlusion maps as I did for the last two painting sessions, so I will also check ambient occlusion. It just occurred to me that I haven't worked on this project for so long that I forgot that this bottom bun in fact has two UV tiles. So it looks like the UV tile in ZBrush is broken. So I'm going to send this mesh back to ZBrush so that ZBrush can have the updated version of the bottom bun, and I'm going to re-export its base color and AO map. All right, so I'm going to show you how I'm going to fix this. This one is slightly complicated because we have paint work. So I'm going to go to the lowest subdivision level first, and I'm going to create a copy of it because I need it to project the data back on. So I'm going to go duplicate, hide the copy, and then this one is going to get the updated mesh from Maya. So I'll import and bring it in. And now if I hit Morph UV, I should see two visible UV tiles, right? If you look at this one, this broken version, I go Morph UV, it's just one and the other one shrinks. This is usually how those errors show themselves. All right, so now I'll just isolate both meshes. I hold down Shift to turn off everything. Isolate both meshes, turn off wireframe, make sure they're at their highest subdivision level. And now that they're both at their highest subdivision level, all I have to do is project the color data onto here. I just want color data, so I'm going to turn on color, but I have to make sure I turn off geometry. So this is my shortcuts in my UI. I only need color, so I'm going to turn off geometry, and I'm going to go project all. Yes, I want the polypaint data. All right, so that's it. Now I have the paint data on the fixed UV. I'm going to delete the old one. So we're good. Yeah, looks good. So I'm going to push out its ambient occlusion and texture polypaint again. And I'm not going to show this, but I'm going to go into my file where the decimation was done for the FBX files that I sent to Substance. And I'm going to update it with this mesh too, and propagate the changes through the Maya file back to the Substance file. I did something like this for the top sauce too. I think the top sauce is broken. So if you want to see how I propagate the changes back through FBX export, just check out that lesson. But when I come back, we'll be in Substance and we'll be assembling all these maps. All right, so we're back in Substance and I've made the changes to the FBX export. Now that I have the update, I'm just going to go edit, re-import mesh, and there it is fixed. That's our second tile from the repair. So I'm going to start with the process of loading in my multicolor maps and setting up my aocentric shading. All right, so it's time to import my multicolor maps. I'm going to go File, Import Resources, Add Resources, and grab all the stuff that I need. Let me start with the onions and the patties because there's a lot more of them. And then these ones I can control select for the bottom bun, charred meat, and the cheese. I'm going to go open. I'm going to select all of them. Set them to texture and go import. Okay, so it looks like everything came in fine. Over here, these onions, there is a 3 in front of it, but because the background is dark, it's hard to see the 3, but all 3 have been loaded in. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to set up the color and the AO-centric map for the patties, and then I'll speed through the rest of them because I've done this 2 times already. And even with the AO-centric map, I'm going to be copying from this top sauce where it's already intact. But I'll just give a brief overview of it, and then I'll forward you to the previous videos where I did it for the top sauce, the cucumbers, and the top bun. Okay, so I'm going to go to the patties. I don't need this layer here. This is a paint layer. I'm going to start with the fill layer. So with this fill layer, it only has color active, which is great. Otherwise, I would have had to alt click to get it. I'm going to drag my patties into the base color. Okay, so it seems to have come in okay. And then I'm going to go up here to the, well, down here to the top sauce. And in here, I should find my AO-centric stack that was created in the previous lesson. I'm just going to copy layers, go to my patties, and paste layers. So if you remember, this is just a fill layer with a black mask. Inside the fill is where the ambient occlusion map goes. So I'm going to drag my patties ambient occlusion map in here. So it's working. And then here it has the levels, which could probably be altered because this is a different AO map. Actually, before I alter the levels, I'm going to pick my color right now for the AO. So I'm going to sample from my burger image. I'm going to look for a dark color in my burger image. And that was a pretty dark one. It looks like it's in the blue spectrum. Let me try to find another color that's more in the reddish spectrum. And let me turn off this wireframe so I can see what's going on. I'm going to turn off these layers temporarily. All right, so there's our AO. Without the noise, without the B&W spots, if I just invert, yeah, I do get the right thing. It does go into the occluded areas. So that noise, the B&W spots is, yeah, I think this is what I was supposed to have done because it does need to be inverted. If I don't invert it, then it's putting the dark spots in the non-occluded areas. So I will invert, but it looks like here for my noise, I had to go a little bit down with the balance. All right, so yeah, happy I did that. So I'm going to repeat this process for all of this stuff, but if you want a detailed overview of these filters and noise maps, definitely take a look at the videos for the top sauce, the cucumber, and the top bun. I explain in detail what these things are doing, and I also show how I added them. So I'm going to speed through the video and connect all these multicolor maps and set up their AO in the same way, and I'll come back so we can start the painting process. Okay, so that's the setup for everything. One thing I had to be very careful about with this cheese is to make sure that I don't have something that's too busy. I've been saying from the start of this project that it has to have a silky, smooth feel to it. So when you come to this AO-centric shading under the black and white spots, I had to pick a color value that allows it to not be so contrasty, right? It looks a lot more smoother and we don't have too much hue, contrast in hue. So it has this yellowish feel all throughout. And as I paint, if it's looking too gritty, I'm going to get rid of that because I don't want that gritty feel for this. Otherwise, it's going to look too close to the top sauce. Now, when it comes to this bottom bun here, I'm going to have to paint a mask because the AO data that's coming in is going to have to be treated differently for the sauce and the bun. So to do that, I'm going to have to paint a mask just like I did with the cucumbers. I painted a mask for their skin, and this allowed me to isolate their innards. So I'm going to add a paint layer, add a black mask, and add a paint layer underneath it. And then I'm going to come in here, isolate it, and paint a mask with any one of these suitable brushes. I think I'm going to go with a cement 2. Interesting. Yeah, I think it'll work well on the edges, and if I have to, I'll reinforce the actual insides, but I think it'll be fine. I'm going to go through and start painting. and go into the mask. Yeah, it's taking, but actually I would have been better off adding a fill layer to do this, just so I can monitor it. I will copy mask and paste mask here, and that should transfer it, and I'll delete this. All right, so I'm going to go in here and paint, and it's going to give me this really sandy feel, which is not bad because I can then reinforce myself at the core and then leave the edges to be a little less defined and more cloudy. This will also make it feel like in these areas where the mask is not fully potent, it'll feel like the bread is poking through, or at least it's the shader properties that I'm about to give the sauce will not be 100%, and that's good. It'll break it up and make it feel good. Should also, if I need to, probably turn on this wireframe to help me better understand the outlines. All right, so I'm going to speed through this because it's just painting, and I'll come back when it's all done. All right, so you see how I intentionally refrained from intensifying the mask on these transitionary areas. This is the first tier of transitioning that is going to help sell these two items, make them cohesive as they are in the reference. Right, but that's not the case for this core here. I go a little bit harder in this core, but even in this core, you see half transparencies or transparencies of, well, you see intensities of different gradation, which I feel like it's going to help sell this thing. So we'll see how that turns out. Now for this top area here, this really is mostly sauce. I'll just pick a stronger brush and just coat it in. I don't particularly care for it to be cloudy or have varying intensity, so I'll just go with the hard brush and get this core at least, and then the transitionary point to the outskirts. And this is rarely going to be seen, so it doesn't matter as much. And then I'll go back to my cement brush for the just at the edge here. But it would also be a cool effect if it was in this core area. It wouldn't be bad, but I just don't care as much because it's always for the most part going to be covered, and I suppose it's fine if when you take it off it's all sauce except for these transition points. And if it really mattered, I could come in here with the negative cement and sort of make it a little bit more cloudy. So yeah, this is the mask, and the great thing about this non-destructive approach is that this is editable. So if I start shading and I don't like the way it's looking, whether in Maya or over here, I'll just come over here and either intensify or detensify this mask. All right, so that's our mask. That, suppose this would be this sauce. This represents sauce. And the inverted version of it. So if I was to duplicate this layer and I inverted this, adding a filter, invert, would be the bun. So everything else belongs to the bun. So I'm going to now go grab my AO stack, come back to this bottom bun, paste it twice. And what I could actually do is just put a group over this. So if I was to group the first one, I could copy this mask and paste this mask. This would be the sauce AO-centric shading. And I could do the same for the top one. And this one over here, copy mask. And paste mask into. I'm going to sample a color from my burger image for the bun. Yeah, it looks like I have this the other way around. So this is in fact. So I should be sampling a color from the sauce here. And for this one, I should be sampling a color from the bun. Actually, it's not that I had it the other way around. It looks like the issue is that this invert node did not come over. So I'm going to copy the effect and paste the effect here so that this is shading the bun. And I'm going to come over here and play with these values. That seems pretty good. And let me see how well this is working. Yeah, this one is going to be a lot grittier. So I'll take this for starters. Okay, so I think that's everybody set up with the AO-centric shading. This is a good preliminary pass. So here I'm almost forcing the bun to come through here. I think it'll be cool, but I think for the edge here, might want to be a little bit more careful with this edge and make sure that the sauce in an area like this is dominant. So let's paint the mask to fill in, make sure these edged areas have sauce, because in the reference, if it's leaking from the top, it'll always be more intense in these areas, and then it sort of fades as we go towards the bottom, because there isn't a lot more sauce at the bottom as there is on the top. So I just want to make sure that these edges are a lot more 100%. It looks like that transition that I had planned might not work out. So I'm going to fill this in. Well, at the top, it'll be fine down here. Yeah, all this here would be good if it's all sauce coming out from underneath the patty. Refrain from having a more sparse sauce over there. Okay, so this is a good starting point, and everything has its AO-centric shading, and it's time to start the hardcore painting. I'm going to get started with the patties. I'm going to do a brief analysis of what I'm seeing. There is this light hue here, this light color, that is what I'm referring to as the medium portion of it. Then you obviously have the singed part, and the singed part does have areas that are significantly darker, so of higher value. So I'm going to keep that in mind. I have this reddish color for the singed part, and then there's these darker areas. And then the transition between the singed part, or what would be the burnt or very well done part, and this rare part, there's this orange transition, but it's not just at the rim, it's in very strategic areas. So I can't just paint it like a gradation. I can't just go from dark to less dark to the orange to this rare. It's in specific areas, so I'm not going to make some very unnatural. It doesn't have any enough abstraction or randomness to make it feel as real as this. And the other thing I want to pay attention to is this right here. This looks to me like a rare portion of the meat, because you can see purples and reds in here, and I think I'll get that last. There's various pockets of it. I see it here, this little purplish color where the meat is completely rare. Some of it is over there, and then it's in really small pockets, and it's definitely only in the areas where it's sort of sitting on top of the rare part. This rare part has also a darker splotchy hue, so this one I'll be very careful with this. It looks like it can go in there with the dirt brush on top of the rare part. Yeah, it's a lot of colors. One thing I'm going to refrain from doing on this albedo map or this base color map, which is a good rule to keep in mind, is you can simplify by not getting every single color in here. It'll still look believable. If I was to just stick with this wineish dark color, this orange color, the rare color, then pick some type of a brown color for this splotchiness, and then go with purples and a light purple for this rare part, I'll have a successful result, even though realistically there's a lot more colors in here than that, right? If I go looking at the crystallized version, I'll see there's a lot of data in here. And actually this is where I can even go trying to pull that data from, but I think I'll be sampling directly from this. I think I can zoom in and get some of this information. So this initial reddish wineish color is going to be our singed part, right? And I will go in there, and as we saw, there's a darker portion of it that is in pockets, so I will go and get them. But right now what I'm going to block in is the medium part, so I'm going to start over there because it's the second most dominant color. So I'm going to add a fill layer. I'm going to add a black mask to it, and I'm going to sample a value from my image for the rare part. There, it's like this grayish color. I'm really bad at judging colors just by looking at them. I guess my screen, the way my screen is calibrated, when I look over there, it does have some grayish color. This rare part, sorry, this medium part is on the outskirts. So I'm going to add a paint, and I'm going to use my cement brush to block in this information. I'm going to make sure I stick to this outer part and not navigate too far into the singed part. All right, so the next part I'm going to get is that yellowish transition from the singed part to this rare part. And I'm going to use the other cement brush just so I get a little bit of a breakup. I'm going to add a fill layer, add a black mask, add a paint layer. I really love this non-destructive approach. It just allows you to try stuff and not really worry. because everything can be fixed. All right, so I'm going to make the brush smaller because this is something I need to do more, I feel like more strategically. I'll vary occasionally, pepper it in. It's weird how it's not just a transitionary thing, it's in certain areas. So I have to be really careful just to not make it a transitionary color. It's just all over the place. So I'm peppering it in. In some places I'm going to push it, make it a little stronger. And it's not exclusive to the top either. It can be found all over. Some people, it might be hard, it must be hard to try to do this and visualize how it's going to contribute to the finished piece. But I like this thing where you isolate the various shading properties to maps and just focus on one at a time. It just allows you to break up the tasks and just not have to worry about painting every shading effect you're seeing from your reference. So it's good to be able to break it down to individual maps. Now I'm seeing an occasional orange hue. Let me duplicate this. Add a black mask, add a paint, and there's this orange, more orange value there that is mostly within this light orange part. It sometimes acts as a transition, so I'm going to go in there and get it too. Yeah, like that. Doesn't have to be everywhere, but yeah, and it's important to be really bold at this stage though. You don't have to apply too gingerly. All right, I'm going to take my smooth normals brush and just do a little bit of blending here so that I don't have might have over intensified. Okay, let me take a look at this thing. Yeah, I might need to go over here and also blend a lot better. With the smooth normals brush, I'm going to go around, just look, make sure I'm getting some good blending. All right, so I'm going to move on to the darker part of the singed part. So I'm going to duplicate this layer, add a black mask, add a paint layer, and I'm going to sample the really dark part. I'm going to come in here, and I think it's time I pick one of these more aggressive brushes as far as the granular feel. So I'm going to go in here with the dirt too and see. Yeah, I think I'm going to stick with the cement for this one too. I think I want to get some nice blending, and the dirt is a little harsher. Well, I can control how much blending I get a lot better with the cement. You have to be very careful where this goes. That feels good. Let me analyze. Okay, I have a lot more to go. So go to back to base color. Keep working it in there. Yeah, so that's good. Now I'm going to put a spray type effect that I'm seeing on the whole thing. Well, mostly the medium part. So I'm going to duplicate this layer, add a black mask, add a paint layer. I'm going to use either dots erased, or actually I'll use dots erased. Yeah, that's a good one. It'll give me a really sprinkle like effect. And I'm going to sample this splotchy value that I see in the medium rare part. Well, sometimes it's mostly a brownish color like that. So let me use that and just go through. Yeah, like that. Definitely really going to help. Yeah, it looks really good. Dots erase is amazing. Yeah, feels good. Okay, that's good. But there's something else I want to do with it. I'm actually going to duplicate it and bring it down here. And I'm going to blur it so that it sits underneath and transitions a lot better. So I'll add a filter, add a blur, and yeah, so it does a better job of marrying to the underlying color. Yeah, that's a lot of blur. Let me chill out with that. Bring it down a bit. Yeah. Okay. All right, so Time to get that rare part, the little rare portions that are in specific areas. I'll just pick some strategic areas and just make them that purplish hue. Duplicate a layer, add a black mask, and it's time to add these rare parts of it. I'm going to once again count on, actually in this instance, I may want to use my smooth normals. I really want it to blend in with its surroundings, and then I can push it at the core. So I'm gonna grab that purplish color and get started. I'm gonna pick, like for instance, an area like this where it'll be hard for, suppose, the heat to get in there, and so there's a higher likelihood of it not getting as cooked. Yeah. And because I'm using the smooth normals brush, I really have to take charge of what my hand is doing, so I don't end up with a very generic looking brush stroke. Make sure it blends well. Yeah, I'm definitely going to have to go over it with some other type of value, I suppose. Yeah, and also have to be careful about how much of it there is. There's not that much. I think that's enough. And then I'm going to create another pass for this. I'm going to try to use, I think, the dirt to grab a lighter hue from that raw portion. See how well it mixes in here. Yeah. Yeah, it's so hard to get this dirt brush to blend. I could blur it, but I think I'm gonna try to go with just actually outlining it myself. It just adds another value. Okay, then the last thing I want to add is a very dark sprinkle, really small, to help these charred meats blend in better, because it's in the reference. You can see these like really dark spots. I'm going to duplicate. And let me look for the best, probably dots. Try dots. So I want them to be more outlined. Although dots erased would probably also work really well. Okay. Yeah, like that. But they're not dark enough. Let me go here and go a little into the darker spectrum. Yeah, looks like I'm gonna have to settle for the results. It's not as bad as I thought. It's not gonna be that different from what I'm trying to achieve with doing it individually. All right, so this is a preliminary pass for my patty, and I'm gonna leave it for now and move on to the rest of the stuff. And I'm looking forward to seeing what it looks like on the model. I'm going to go on the cheese, and I'm going to start with a fill, add a black mask, add a paint layer, and I'm going to grab my dots erase brush, which I really trust, and sample a color from my image. Something different, probably a more saturated hue. I think that should be it. If it doesn't stand out, I'll just keep playing with it some more. And I'm going to use my dots erase to do some scattering. Let me inspect the mask to see what's happening. Yeah, it looks like I might need a more dominant color. Yeah, that might be too much. And I don't think dots erase might be what I want to use. I'm gonna go for that cowl spatter brush. If it's not too spotty. I just want something that will marry into what I have now a little better. Just to add some more interesting shapes in there. I won't go too far. And it does look like, makes it look like I'm painting occlusion, but I'm not intentionally doing that. So I'm going to break it up a little bit more so it doesn't look like I'm just painting in the occluded areas. And if this makes it look too gritty, I will blur it out. I think I'm going to blur it out anyway. I think it'll help it. Okay, so this is just a little breaking up. I'm going to add a filter and definitely blur it because I don't trust it to not completely ruin. Yeah, just a little bit of breakup. And now it's time to jump into the more difficult blending of these browner hues. So I'm going to sample, I'm going to duplicate, well, I'll create a new fill layer, black mask, add a paint layer, and sample that brownish color and start doing this marrying process. This is just, I'm going to use my own discretion to figure out what a good place to get, yeah, this marrying. I'm starting with the dirt brush, but I'm sure I will move on to other brushes. And I think I should be more intentional. So I'm going to grab the cement brush for this one, because these are streaks that are very noticeable. They have like really outlined shapes. It's like meat sauce. So it's dripping from the meat. So if I can, I'm going to give that trail all the way to the meat. And it's the first thing that's going to help to marry the cheese to its surrounding meat. Yeah, and it looks like it's very prominent also at the transition points. So all right, now to further break them up, I'm going to duplicate this, add a black mask, add a paint layer, go for a darker sample, really go in there. This time I should grab a different brush. Let me see what the dirt is going to do. Let's see if I can get some different shapes in some of these areas. Try the dirt spots. Yeah, this is a better breakup. Dirt spots. Just so it doesn't all look too similar. All right, so now I want to do a better marrying of these chunks and this dark portion with smaller shapes that help these bigger chunks transition into the cheese a lot better. So that might take a couple of layers of sprinkling with brushes like the dots erase, the dot, and the dirt. I'm going to see which one works the best. Let me duplicate this layer, add a black mask, add a paint layer, and I'm going to try to go with a different brown color, only so we get a little bit more breakup. Even though they look very close to each other, they're going to be different. Right, so I'm going to start, yeah, like that. The objective is to make them marry. And I'm going to do something, because I also did something like this similar for the top here for the patties. I'm going to go in there and take individual ones and change their intensity, just so everything doesn't look the same. Let me try. I'm going to go between the dots erased and the dirt to see what it yields, so we get varying results. You zoom out, yeah. Right, as long as it's doing a good job marrying. And I'm also going to vary the brush size so that we get different shapes. I just made it smaller, then bigger. Yeah, the dirt is doing a good job because it has a few of its strokes where it naturally just increases the intensity. And constantly have to remember to change the brush size. And it's also a good opportunity to use it as a way of marrying the patties to the cheese a lot better, which is a pass I am going to do. I think I'll try something else with that. I'm going to go over here to this top area. This is something I'm just seeing in the reference, and it really does help to tie the two pieces together with the patty underneath. Looks like chunks of meat. Yeah, looks pretty nice. Okay, now I'm going to do a personality pass where I'll use a more individualized approach. Let me duplicate, add a black mask, paint, and I'm going to pick a different value and find, let me just use my cement 2. I'm going to come in here and start doing some actually I want a stronger brush, like a brush that does a better outlining. Actually no, this is good. I think I could, I just want some different shapes in here. I'm gonna probably speed through this to help really break it up, because all I'm getting is like spherical shapes. So this would help me to get some more abstraction, if that's what you can call it. Call this a personality pass. And so it doesn't look like you use some procedural brushes and just see the same shapes over and over again. So here I'm doing a lot of connection of some of these pieces so they just don't look like isolated islands, and it just makes it look very disjointed. So every chance I get, I'm going to try to do some type of a connection. It'll help it sell it a bit better. Okay, I think I'm going to stop here. I have to be very careful with these passes that I've put on top here, because I'm going to need to take all their masks when it comes time to do my SSS scale and potentially also roughness. Like pretty much all the maps I'm going to use, SSS scale, roughness, all need to take this into consideration so we don't treat them like cheese. But that's why it's great to have these masks, just duplicate and reuse them. So yeah, I think this is the work for the cheese. All right, so when it comes to this bottom bun and sauce, before I start really detailing stuff, what I really want to work on is the transitions, how it transitions into the bread. If I take a look at the mask that I painted for this aocentric portion, look at the mask. Yeah, it's very simple gradation, and I want to make it a little bit more complex so that we can see how the sauce is integrating with the bread, because in some areas it's very evident that both of them are competing to exist. You see the bread is soaked in here, in some areas it's bleeding in, and so I just want a better unification of this bread and this. And yet again, I'm going to use a non-destructive approach by just adding another paint layer. So this was the initial mask, I'll call it, and I can do all these changes on this new paint layer. And I'm also going to change this because it no longer is going to be just housing the aocentric shading. It's just, I suppose, the sauce mask. All right, the aocentric shading can just be down here. So with this active, I'm going to grab my Cement 2 brush, and I'm really going to work. This is going to be like a personality pass. I probably should do it, some of it in mask mode, just so you see the kind of work I'm going to be doing. So it's going to be blending, like this type of blending, and probably best if I use cement instead of, yeah, like that to really blend. And I think I'm also going to turn on my wireframe because I want to see the detail when I'm putting this stuff, so I can mix it with the forms better. Go back to the mask and see what I've done. Okay, yeah, so that it's, I'll be careful not to just do a like simple pattern. It just really has to feel very abstract. All right, so now I'm going to start with that splotchiness that I gave the sauce up top with the Kyle spatter brush. So I'm going to add a fill layer in this sauce mask. And that's great that it's now recognizing all the newly painted mask on the group over it. So I'm going to add a black mask. I'm going to add a paint layer. And I'm going to sample a color for my sauce. Okay. And I'm going to start the painting process. Just grab his brush and see what I'm going to get. Some of these areas. It's good that it's all controlled by masking. Top of it. Really does mean that if I was to come in here and just really even spray this all over, I'm good because it's really not going to go into the areas that I don't want it to go into. All right, let me go back onto this mask. See if I can push it a little bit more in some areas. I'm gonna add another pass on top of here, as I want to try to push a little bit more. Now, one thing I do want to do is go into my aocentric shading and play around just to get a little bit more of a high contrast result. So I'm going to go to my black and whites map, see if I can, yes, dial things in. There we go. That really gritty feel, just get it automatically. On the innards, that's important. So I just had to pull that down a bit. And now I'm going to add a layer and try to add some more grittiness to it. More than likely with the dots erased or one of these dirt brushes. So I'm going to duplicate this. Pass. Add a black mask. Add a paint layer. And sample hues. Let me see if I can get a different color type. I'm going to get my Dirt 3 brush, see what it's going to give me as I... Okay, that's too similar to what I had before. I want a darker. Let me find something like that. Let's see what it gives me. Yeah. I might need to go a little darker. Yeah, like that. That feels good. So I'm gonna go in there and try to blend this in. Give it another tier of coloring with the dirt brush. And I'm actually also going to go into the bottom bun and I'm going to play with its aocentric shading a little bit. I'm going to come down here with this balance value and see if we can get a more high contrast result. Okay. Yeah. Dialing it in and out. Yeah, that flattens it. Yeah, it looks like this might be just to get different kind of texturing. Yeah, that feels a little bit more interesting. All right, since I'm seem to be going off with a hue a little bit, I'm going to come over here and try to make sure that my colors match the top bun a little bit better. because my hues have seem to have really gone in a what would be a wrong direction. Yeah, I think I got it right there. A little bit more matched. One of these colors could come down. Yeah, that one perhaps. Okay, so grab this, bring it down slightly. I probably should go in there and do a little bit of marrying of these pieces, just like I did with the dirt brush. So I'm going to do that pass. I'm going to duplicate layers, add a black mask, sample some of these charred pieces, add a paint, get my dirt 3 and do some marrying, really small. That is too much. My dots erased. Yeah, that feels better. So blend in with your surroundings a little better. It just looks so isolated. Okay, I think that's good. Come in here, add another paint, and go in there and do like a little personality pass. Let me pick a very strong brush, basic soft perhaps. Just really force in some darker, more pronounced. It'll blend better. I hate it when it just feels like the same intensity of a spray brush. I know that this is not something that is that visible in the reference, but I don't like the way these two elements are meeting with each other. I think there needs to be a better blending, better cohesion between the two of them. So I'm going to add a black mask here and just add a paint layer and pick a color that allows me to blend these two together just a little bit better. Like a brown color. See if my dirt 3 will do the job. Yeah, just like that. And I should probably be looking at a more powerful brush. Yeah, like that. Just create a little bit more cohesion over there. It just feels like that would be the case. No, it's not. Looks like liquidated meat juice should be sprinkled. Should be sort of seeping out from underneath the patty. And I'm going to do something similar to this cheese thing. I'm actually going to do it for as many areas as possible. These harsh geometry lines need to be broken up. You need things that help these two things look like they belong next to each other. These 3D separations are going to be a problem. And this is what the fluid mesh is also going to work to fix. So there's going to be some transitionary painting that works. Yeah, it's starting to look a lot more cohesive. I'm going to go up there and do the same thing for the cheese transition. And then I'm going to come back and down here and do a transition from this cheese to this sauce. Just get a little bit of yellows in here to marry it a little bit better. But I'm going to go up here and do it for this. So I'm going to this cheese. Duplicate this. Add a black mask. Add a paint layer. Call it a meat to cheese transition. We come in here. All right, so now I want to go back to my bottom bun. And I'm going to do let me duplicate this layer. Add black mask. Add paint layer. And I'm going to do a cheese to sauce transition. I should actually just sample this color, be on the safe side. I'm going to do it similarly. I don't want to make it too dirty because in this instance, it's more about, let me take my smooth normals brush. Yeah, it's very fluid. It's a fluid. It's less, I don't want it to feel chunky. I just want these to look like they marry better. Yeah, like that. Kind of eradicates the geometry line over there. Yeah, it looks a lot more cohesive. I'm going to count on the fluid mesh to do this, but I want to start now. Here too. definitely there. Kind of go back to this cheese, grab this pass, and continue this blending pass. And I'm going to do something similar with this cheese pass and this sauce up here. So I'm going to make the sauce bleed into it a little bit more. So I'm going to duplicate this layer, add a black mask, add a paint layer, and I'm going to pick this orange and grab my smooth normals brush and also come over here and try to unify this transition point here. Okay, so I think that's a good amount of the work. All right, I really think it's time to test this thing. I have to go look at it so we can pick our roughness and SSS scale and figure out how to do that stuff. I'll probably push the development of that to the next lesson after this analysis so that I can do that stuff with the painting of the fluid mesh. Hopefully I can get it all in one. If not, I guess that means there'll be 2 lessons left after this, but we'll see. We'll see what I can get done in this lesson. I think I'm going on 2 hours. Okay, so let's take a look at what I have for these test renders. I do want to point out before I get started that I took this light that is helping me to illuminate the front of the burger a little bit better. I think I added it in the last lesson so I could better see what is happening underneath this top bun. So I just took it back a little because it's illuminating a little too much. So I brought its intensity down to 1.5. All right, so what I did was I set up all of these newly painted items. So that's the patties, the cheese, the onions, the bottom bun, and the charred meat. I set them up with a basic setup. I have tabs for each and every one of them. This is the more complex setup from the cucumbers. But here, all I've done is just wired the base color into the base color and the subsurface color and radius. They are going through an AI correct node because I mentioned before that I will more than likely want to alter what's going into subsurface color and radius. So I want this ahead of time in preparation to be able to play around with my base color map before they go into these subsurface properties. And I also made sure to set the subsurface type to random walk 2. But it's important to know that all of these have been set up to use just the basic settings of subsurface scattering. So there's nothing special happening. The scale is 1 for all of them. That will not be the case as I move forward to refine these values and import my SSS scale map. Same thing with roughness. So let me go up here so you can see roughness is the default of 0.2. So let's take a look at all these renders. The first thing I did was play around with the different HDRIs. So these are the final results. And if you remember, I have all these HDRIs. So about 7 HDRIs. And what you're going to see me cycle through is all 7 of them. This is the first one. The names are right over there on top of them. I've labeled them. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to figure out which of these I should be using to test my renders mostly. Some of them look really fantastic. I like this one a lot, this Blauburn Night. Yeah, they all look interesting and they'll help me to see this thing under different lighting. So one thing I also want to point out is that what you're seeing right now, these renders, there is a mesh that I hope I haven't made you forget about, because I don't talk about it as much, but it's this fluid mesh that is around the burger. Like every single patty, sorry, that's around the patties. So every single patty has this sort of fluid mesh that I told you I wasn't going to UV, and it's just using some transmission properties, and it's contributing to the wetness that you see in the crevices here. And it's also important to know that all these renders I just showcased exclude this fluid mesh. I'm going to show you what the fluid mesh looks like at the end, but it's important to know that these renders do not have that, because I just want to be able to inspect everything without the fluid mesh. Now, one of the first things that I immediately noticed that will have to be worked on is the value of the medium part of the patties. So that's not faring too well. It's a little too dark. So that's going to be an easy change. The onions turned out better than I expected, considering that they haven't been painted at all. And they also need their transmission map painted for them to really do what they're supposed to do. But I will be working on making sure they're integrating with their background a lot better. These charred onions look good, but unfortunately they are not going to be this very purple color, and they're obviously not going to have an SSS scale of 1. It's going to vary depending on what is charred and what is still not charred onion, and that's going to be determined when I go back to make these fixes. This bottom bun turned out really well. It looks really wet, but once again, this is all with the same SSS scale. The SSS scale will have to be varied so that the bun has the correct SSS scale. I think the SSS scale for the sauce is looking good, so I won't be surprised if I paint it to be 1. Another thing that you can also ignore is the fact that all these painting of charred meat directly on these meshes is also going to look wrong, because it has SSS and it won't have SSS. I will use the masks that were used to create them to isolate subsurface scattering from them, so they will integrate better with these pieces of geometry that represent the charred meat. But right now they're just going to look like they blend in. And overall, you're seeing that the cheese looks weird and everything looks a little too specky, but that is expected. I just really wanted to see how these colors are working, and so far it's not that bad. It's not bad at all. Another thing I can't see too well is the rare meat that I painted, and that I understand why. It's because this medium part of it is the wrong value. So if we can't see that, we're definitely not going to see those rare regions. But I'm sure they'll stick out when I go fix the color, and if they don't, I'll push them so they do. One good thing I'm seeing so far is how well things like this are integrating already without the fluid mesh. So the cheese and this sauce maybe a little bit too well, so I might need to make some alterations there, but they look pretty good. And here too, the way the sauce and the cheese are blending together. But yeah, this cheese looks a little too translucent, so all that will be worked out as the roughness and the SSS scale are finalized. Now, one thing I do want to show you before we leave is what to expect when the fluid mesh comes in. So I'm going to, this is a render of the Brown Photo Studio, and the latest render I did was with the fluid mesh. So I'm going to uncheck it so you can see what happens. So there's this swelling, and that is coming from distortion being produced by the fact that Arnold thinks that the fluid, what I'm using to represent the fluid mesh, is thicker than, it's perceiving it to be a thicker fluid. So it's producing some distortion as we're looking at the meat through the fluid mesh. So that's why you're seeing this swelling effect. So that would have to be fixed. I would have to set the proper properties to make sure this thing doesn't appear too thick, so that it doesn't swell like this. One thing I'm surprised about is how well it's blending into the surrounding regions without an opacity map to feather the edges. Because if you look at the fluid mesh, it has a very sharp edge. So I'm expecting to paint an opacity map. I'm probably still going to paint it because I'm not going to trust it to be this clean. but you can barely see that separation line where the fluid mesh starts and stops. It's somewhere up here too. But on a good note, what you can expect from the fluid mesh is things like this. You see how well this region over here of the meat seems to be integrating now. You can feel the fluid on it. And as a matter of fact, here you can actually see the edge. So this is where you can see the edge and where I would have to do some feathering over here, because you can very visibly see where the edge stops. But look at how it transitions from the meat into the cheese. Like really nice fluid feel. And so we're going to get that by default. And if you look at the reference, the main thing that I'm going to be painting is pretty much this liquidated cheese on the fluid mesh and other things, right? Most of this liquidated cheese more than anything. So it's going to integrate with the transmissive feel. But in those areas, they're going to be painted to be opaque or partially opaque, pretty much like what I'm going to be doing with the onions. All right, and it's going to help really tie a lot of this stuff together, like all this stuff here, this liquidated cheese that's blending these two together, all of that is going on the fluid mesh. So yeah, this is the work in progress. I'm not going to be able to do the fixes in this lesson, but I think I can wrap everything up in the next lesson. So I want to go over what is left to do. So in the next lesson, I'm going to do the paint fixes that I just spotted for everything. Definitely paint the onions because we haven't done anything there, and definitely fix the patties and whatever else needs to be fixed as far as what's already been painted. Then I'm going to paint the roughness map for all these newly painted items. Then I'm going to paint the SSS scale for all these newly painted items. And then I'm going to paint the transmission map for the onions. And then I'm going to do something which I mentioned in the last lesson, and that's modeling of a fluid mesh to help the cucumbers transition into the sauce better. So if you remember, I'm going to model a new mesh that's going to sit over the cucumbers like this and drape onto the sauce like so. And it's also going to have transmission properties and act like the fluid mesh below. And it's going to help add some hot highlights or make the transition between these two wet, because that's something that I'm seeing in my reference here, this little wetness here. So I want to simulate that with a fluid mesh up there. And then I'll finish by painting the opacity, transmission map, and roughness map for all the fluid meshes. So that would be the newly modeled fluid mesh and the main one, which needs to be painted to give us the proper effect. So pretty much this fluid mesh, right? All the work on this is going to be done. All right, so I'll see you in the next lesson, which will hopefully be the last lesson. And when that is done, this asset will be ready to be packaged, and then I'll just upload it to my Patreon for my, I think, tier 2 members. If you're a part of my tier 2 members on Patreon, you can have this model for commercial use if you want to. As long as you stay subscribed to my Patreon, you can use it for whichever commercial projects you want. So I'll see you guys in the next lesson where I finish this thing. Hopefully it'll just be a 2-hour session where I can do everything on this list and wrap up this project.